Coming up, we have Thomas Pierce and Jairus Rossi. They are going to be talking with you all about understanding your CSA customers. So I'm going to pass the mic to Thomas and Jairus.
Good evening. It's awesome to be here. I think our presentation really fits right in with what we just heard. Several times, Aaron and Mike, you mentioned knowing your customer, thinking like your customer. So Jairus and I are going to share about some research that's ongoing at UK that I helped contribute to in my master's there on understanding consumer values of CSA subscribers. So Jairus, I think, is pulling up the slides, and we'll get started. I'll just go ahead and introduce myself while he's doing that. I'm Thomas Pierce. I am a business development assistant with Kentucky Center for Ag and Rural Development, or KCARD. So in my current role, I help farmers with business planning and grant writing. This is a very busy time with lots of grants going on, but it's cool to be here. Before I was at KCARD, I was a master's student at UK. I got my master's from UK last summer, and I got to work with Jairus and Dr. Tim Woods on this CSA values research. That's really cool, and we're going to share that tonight. It looks like Jairus might be having trouble sharing the slides. Jairus, I can try to share the slides. I think I have permission to do that. Can you all see that, or do I need to get in present mode?
Yeah, Tom, if it looks like, just go into presenter mode.
Thanks, Thomas. It made me shut my Zoom down to try to share, and yeah.
It's what I always fear. I have two monitors, and I never know what's going to happen when I hit that button. So, all right, but we're good now. So Jairus, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll jump into it.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jairus Rossi. I'm a assistant research professor at UK in ag economics, and I've been working there for almost 8 years now. And I came on board to start to do research on CSA and kind of consumer values and motivations. And so I worked with Thomas on this project, and we're excited to present our results here.
Yeah, so the main questions that we started out with this project were: what values influence consumer decisions to join a CSA, and what marketing strategies appeal to different consumer segments? So the idea is the same marketing message isn't going to work for different sets of consumers. Obviously, consumers have different values. So Jairus is going to talk about some background info on CSA, and then we'll get into consumer values in CSA, the specific survey and research that we did last year, and then the results, and then what the implications of that are.
Yeah.
So Jairus, yeah.
Oh yeah, thanks, Thomas. So yeah, just a little background to this project. So in 2015, I started at UK learning about CSA. I'd been involved as a consumer for many years prior to that, but so what Tim Woods, who I had been working with quite a bit, and you may have heard from at some point during the past few days, we were working basically mostly with vegetable CSAs, and so this is kind of produce subscriptions that last between 20 and 25 weeks in Kentucky, trying to understand how, if you're a consumer and you've come to CSA for the first time, kind of what benefits or what kind of behavioral changes you might have. And so, next slide, please. We had kind of we were involved talking to people around the country and different CSA organizations, kind of looking at what was going on at that time, 2015 on, and we were seeing how the market was evolving. So, for instance, we, as part of this national network of technical assistance providers, we were talking to people in New York, Wisconsin, California, and in all of those places which were pretty early adopters of the CSA concept and the model, had pretty well developed markets for that. They were seeing a decrease in in subscriptions around that time, which contrasted a bit with our experience in Kentucky, where we were actually seeing a lot of growth in terms of people learning about CSA, consumers understanding what it was and subscribing. And so we had also seen places where there were subscription or incentives to lower the cost of getting people to take that first step, such as in Madison, Wisconsin, they had a health insurance rebate. And Tim Woods thought we should try to figure out a way to do that here, but with employers. And so, we wanted to lower the cost, see what would happen if we could get more people on board to try a CSA subscription. And so, Thomas, could you go to the next slide, please? Oh, so we started a project at UK, but what was interesting before I get to that was COVID. Not the most interesting time, but it was an impactful one. And one of the things we noticed as part of this national network was that there was a lot of renewal of interest across the country during COVID, especially the first 2 years in CSA, because it provided a safe way to get vegetables. People were more concerned about health implications of everything, but including food. And so it brought a lot of first-time shareholders into the fold, people who had never known about it, people who were maybe considered doing it, but the pandemic provided some motivation to try it for the first time. And so you saw a lot of innovation nationally and locally of farmers figuring out ways to make CSA more accessible and safe and whatnot. And so we saw, this led to a really large surge in demand nationally. But you also saw some competition from other market channels who were trying to offer or seeming to offer a similar kind of concept, even though they weren't coming from local farms and whatnot. So next slide, please. So yeah, to the program, and this is where our research starts to come about. But prior to COVID, we were, 2015, we had seen nationally kind of a decline, in Kentucky more of an increase. We wanted to increase that more. We wanted people to learn about CSA. So we developed a voucher program at UK with some grant funding. And with this, employees received $200 discount to subscribe to a CSA, which was at that time maybe a third of the subscription. And we were really targeting first-time shareholders. We didn't want anyone who didn't have experience, or we wanted people that didn't have experience to try it. So this was the incentive. As part of the deal, they had to take some surveys before and after, just to measure the impact, whether they're eating more vegetables, whether they're considering buying local food more often outside of the CSA arrangement. And so we measured the impact over the course of that first year, found some very positive results. We presented to the UK's health and wellness and benefits offices, and they were pretty on board with expanding and actually funding on their own a similar kind of voucher benefit. So that expanded starting in 2016 with about 250 funded vouchers of $200 each per year. Well, $200, about between 150 and 250 vouchers per year, depending. We had some smaller vouchers and some larger vouchers, but this became a general benefit in 2019, and UK offers over 1,000 each year. And so that was similar to the effect of COVID. We, during this time of offering the voucher, we got more people who were not experienced with CSA, maybe weren't perfect for the model, but were willing to try it. And our hope was that once they got on board and experienced it for a year, they would become CSA people. So, all right, Thomas.
So kind of shifting into consumer values and CSA, looking at the survey itself. We started off with focus groups, which was really interesting. That allowed us to kind of develop an idea of where we wanted to go with the survey. But the question was, what do different shareholders value about CSA? And that answer is obviously going to impact marketing. It's going to impact messages about CSA. It's going to impact program support for the UK voucher program specifically, but for other institutional voucher programs and for farmers as well, for CSA farmers as well. And so we were able to do focus groups and a survey of 2 groups of UK employees. Those that claimed a CSA voucher but did not actually end up subscribing to a CSA in 2022, and those who claimed a CSA voucher and actually followed through with subscribing to a CSA. We won't go into the survey data analysis, in detail, but we used a best worst scaling experiment. We used it for several reasons, but a big reason is it just gives you more data than a typical Likert scale does. Jairus, I'm sure you could correct me if I'm wrong there, but we had 11 questions, 11 total values. Each question has a set of 5 values, and then respondents would rank the values in each question. So this is an example of one of those questions. Suppose you're deciding whether to purchase a CSA subscription. Which of the following considerations is most important and which is least important? And so, as you can see, you pick which value is least important on the left and then most important on the right. So if I were the one taking the survey, I might say, well, to me, the convenience of the CSA doesn't really matter. Let's just rank that the least important. But to me, the affordability of the share, that's the most important. So I would rank that on the right. So these are the 11 values that we came up with for the survey. As I mentioned, we had focus groups, and that's where we looked at literature, and then we also conducted these focus groups to try to come up with these values to put into the survey. This is by no means a perfect list, but we really wanted to capture an idea directly from UK CSA shareholders or people who were participating in the voucher program and who were participating in CSA. What do they value? And so they gave us things like variety, quality, health, affordability, convenience, and then there's a brief definition there for each of these values. For the analysis, we use a mixed logit model, and that ranks the values from most to least important for each consumer segment. So our segments, well, as I mentioned, we had subscribers and non-subscribers. And then we also, underneath that, had kind of subgroups of people who had experience in CSA before and people who had no experience in CSA, and then some income segments as well. So now looking at the results, I'm going to cover the first part, which is the statistics from the overall survey. It's broken out into subscriber and non-subscriber. So again, that subscriber group, those are people who claimed a voucher for a CSA from UK and actually followed through and subscribed to a CSA that season. And then the non-subscriber claimed a voucher, but for whatever reason, never ended up actually following through and subscribing to CSA. So these statistics kind of follow what's already in the literature to a certain extent, in that it's predominantly female, higher educated, white Caucasian, higher income. But there are some other things that I'd like to kind of draw out of this. It's worth noting, something that kind of jumps out is that our subscriber and non-subscriber group have a very high percentage of graduate professional degrees in education. And a lot of this, Jairus, I think, is because we have a lot of healthcare workers at UK with professional degrees who participate in the CSA program. For income, you can see that overall, the subscriber category does tend to have higher income in some of those categories. We'll talk about that more later on, that affordability aspects. Some of the other ones that were interesting, we could look at these all day, but I think some of the other ones that are very interesting are household size. The common narrative around CSA is that, you have a big family, you have a lot of people in your household, you're more likely to subscribe to CSA. That wasn't necessarily the case with the survey group that we had. And then the last one that I'll kind of highlight is down at the bottom, years worked at UK. Those with more years at UK were more likely to be, a higher percentage of them were subscribers. This is kind of a key thing to emphasize here. The longer someone's employed at a university that offers a benefit like this, it seems like the more likely they are to engage in the program, to know about the program. And so finding ways to talk about it to people who might be newer at their employer is important. So Jairus, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Thomas. Thomas's research and analysis on this was really good, and if you want an interesting read, his thesis is available. I'm sure he's happy for me to promote it. But it's really great work, and so a lot of this work comes from what he was doing for his thesis, and I tried to expand on it a little bit, but this is kind of what he did, and it's really what we found. We found a lot of interesting things as we've gotten. It's a really rich set of data, and we're just now starting to figure out different ways to look at it. But the way that, as you're looking at this, think of these numbers here. They're just kind of the magnitude of importance. So this method is interesting because it forces people. If you give someone a survey, it's very easy for them to say, "That's important. That's important. Everything's important to me." But in this method, you can't do that. You have to make a choice as to what do you find very important and what do you find not important at all. And so you ask that question 11 times, everything gets compared to each other, and then you can generate this really nice rank of things, of different values for each segment. And you can do this, so we do this with a few different segments, but the first one is just who is subscribing to a CSA, so the subscribers versus non-subscribers. And so the higher the number, the more important that value is relatively to each other. So the main takeaway here, which is you've probably already figured out, is that affordability is the key thing to people who are not subscribing. They value affordability, and the high upfront cost of a CSA is probably a disincentive. They also care about convenience. So the way that I kind of interpret that, and there may be different ways, is that they're seeing this as, they value convenience and they see CSA as not being very convenient. It could be a different interpretation there. But for subscribers, though, if you look at affordability, and this might be because they have more money, more disposable income, they're maybe in more a stable situation since they've been at UK for a longer amount of time. Affordability is a lesser concern, and but what you can take away from this is that what they do care about is things like the quality of the vegetables. That's paramount. The health impacts, the sustainability or environmental impacts of what they're buying. And convenience here is less of a concern, and so maybe they're actually seeing CSA as something that is convenient. We have a hard time kind of interpreting that value, or even if they do see it as inconvenient, the other attributes such as the health benefits or the environmental impacts, those are more important to people who are subscribing. So when you market, depending on who you want to market to, a lot of subscribers care about sustainability and the local impact of what they're doing, and you probably already know all of that. So next slide, please. Now, so it's just when experience matters, I think. And so what we did here, the next two slides we're breaking up the people who subscribed by whether or not they're a first timer, or if they have a, more years of experience with it. So, we compare people who think they know what they're getting, or who think they know what they're getting, but they don't know because they don't have experience, versus people who do have experience, and their experiences inform, maybe it has changed the values, maybe it's changed what they value in their CSA. But if you look at someone, all right, if you look at new subscribers, so that's the folks on the right, they care about the potential health impacts and the quality of their CSA. They care about affordability as well. But so they might be seeing this as expensive. It's a new experience, but they decided to do it. And so things like the potential health benefits are maybe outweighing their perceived high cost of the CSA. Now, once you start experiencing CSA, so that's the people on the left, you might start valuing a different aspect. So we see quality and variety as being the two most important things here. And this is something we hear in focus groups. The people really who have experience are always saying, like, I was kind of surprised at how different what we got was from something you get at the supermarket. And once you get that tangible experience of how fantastic the vegetables are, then that gives you that may change what you value. So the people who are going into it without experience they probably have some concept that the quality is better, but until you actually have that experience, I see that as the value takes more precedence. So experience matters in this group. And in the next group, for the non-subscribers, experience also matters. So in both groups, you can see affordability is really the most important consideration. And the reason probably they're not subscribing. And if you look at the mean for the non-subscribers who have no experience, that's the highest of all the values we got in any of these segments. So they're definitively saying it's too expensive. I'm not even going to consider it, even though they took the voucher, they looked at their options and were like, this is probably not for me. But they do value quality, and so in both cases, so even without the previous experience, they're recognizing that what they probably get is good, but the sticker price is outweighing their interest in excellent vegetables. So those without experience are also concerned about convenience, or probably the lack thereof. So this, with CSA, one of the things, if you haven't had experience, is that the pickup process, the payment process, all the processes involved can be kind of daunting or confusing if you haven't done it before. So, and that kind of is reflected if you look at the non-subscribers with experience. Convenience ends up not even being a consideration. It's way down on our list of things that are important. So once you get that experience, you probably see it's actually more convenient than I thought it would be. And that's something we actually have heard in focus groups as well, Thomas. I think you remember when we did a focus group with new subscribers and experienced subscribers, and the new subscribers were all like, "Oh, this is super, super convenient and awesome." And that would, it was good to hear that once you get that experience, it quickly changes how you think of what you're getting and how you do it. So getting that knowledge of what CSA is and how to do it is really important. And go back up there again. Both groups they do care about the potential health benefits. So this, again, these attributes, maybe along with the quality, might be potential areas to emphasize when marketing to CSA to people who are on the fence, maybe not quite ready to commit, or maybe it's too expensive. Really leaning into the kind of the culture of health or the potential health benefits you might find some purchase there. But really, before that can happen, consumer perceptions about affordability have to change first. So next slide, please. So just to emphasize that, really, we look at lower income households in this case. So under 50,000 was the best we could do statistically. It would have been nice to go to under 25,000, but We're looking at both subscribers and non-subscribers here. And again, affordability is important, which is not surprising. But for those who did subscribe, the potential health benefits outweigh the cost, seemingly, at least in how they answer these questions about values. For those who did not subscribe, again, convenience is this is a critical factor. So, and this isn't surprising given that lower income households might have more time limitations in terms of preparing foods or picking up CSA, your CSA subscription. So, especially in that can be if there's a limited pickup times, which, you know, that can have some impact on folks. So depending on what kind of program they're involved in, there might be ways to get around that. But yeah, convenience is a very important factor. All right, Thomas, last one there. Okay. So just to review and to look at this visually, what I've done here is I've put the top 5 values for each of the segments. Non-subscribers on the left, subscribers on the right. Affordability across the board, that's the biggest impediment to subscription for non-subscribers, regardless of experience level or income level. Affordability does matter also to subscribers who don't have experience, and for those in the lower income category. In both subscribers and non-subscribers, the potential health benefits and the quality of the CSA, both of those things are prominent in the top 5 for whatever segment there might be. So that's something to think about. And then for non-subscribers, convenience, which we interpret as inconvenience, is important to every one of the non-subscriber groups except for those with CSA experience. So I'm going to move on to the implications of these results just to kind of, go back up there once, Thomas, sorry. You can see also with the subscribers, things like sustainability are prominent in their mind. Local impact is really important. So, you know, supporting farm incomes for local farmers, that's something that matters. Supporting local economies, something that matters across many of the segments, regardless of their subscription status. So these are things that, you know, you probably already play up what could be that really folks value regardless of who they are. So, or at least they say they do. All right, next one. So the implications of these results. Finding ways to make CSA affordable is critical. And so from our perspective, so employers or institutions, organizations, we're, you know, involved in this national CSA network. We're trying to figure out different ways that we can promote CSA nationally to create more awareness, consumer awareness. So many people don't even know what it is. And despite advertising campaigns, despite the impact of COVID, it's still a niche market in many ways. So finding ways to make it more visible and understandable are critical. And so things like workplace programs are like what we have with UK. The thing that's cool about the UK voucher program is there are 12,000 employees at UK. So when you market CSA, you're the CSA voucher program, you're reaching a lot of different people. So that may have never heard about CSA. So other ways to do this might be to somehow lost my notes, but okay. Come up with different payment options. So one of the things, if you can get employers on board and to fund a cost offset or a voucher or a health insurance rebate, is that you can lower the costs and that can make it more appealing. If you can figure out ways, if organizations can figure out ways to bundle vouchers with other benefits like SNAP benefits, if we can figure those kind of things out, then we can reach new shareholder audiences in a way that we might not have in the past. So, but for farmers, this is harder, I would think, because you don't necessarily want to lower the cost of subscription, but if you can find ways to tie share cost to income, maybe through a sliding scale model, where some people pay more, some people pay less. Figure out a way to make that work. That can be useful. Offering payment plans to folks with lower incomes might be more appealing. And then working with food access and technical assistance organizations, there are a lot of different organizations out there that can help, that may already have funding to do work and need to partner with farmers. And a lot of you are probably already doing work like that. So next one. Now, to some extent though, it's a lot about consumer perception, right? So marketing the value of CSA, it seems to be expensive, but maybe it's not as expensive as it appears to be. So doing things like talking about the weekly cost of a CSA can be beneficial, where especially if, like in the case of this voucher program, if you are offering a voucher and you're basically keeping the cost of a weekly share under $25 a week or something, depending on the size of the share. And so if you look at the composition of that box and you can demonstrate that you're getting this amount of stuff, if you bought this in the grocery store, or if you bought it at Whole Foods or something like that, you're actually going to save money, or it's going to be competitive. Figuring out ways to be like, this is just like getting groceries, except you're getting something better than you would get at the grocery store, because that stuff had to be grown and then picked before it was ripe, and then put in a shipping container and shipped across the world, and then put under ethanol or whatever to ripen. You're getting something qualitatively different. So figuring out ways to talk about the value of CSA in a way that contrasts with what you would normally get somewhere, and then showing how much it costs on a weekly basis, that can be beneficial, and you probably are doing that as well. There's been a lot of research on the behavioral and health impacts of CSA on subscribers. So I know the Kentucky Farm Share Coalition and the CSA Innovation Network, they have a bunch of resources that kind of document research that shows that if you eat more vegetables, if you eat local, things like that, you're gonna maybe have some health benefits here and there. And so if you're if you're working, say, if you already have a bunch of shareholders and you have some really dedicated folks that are in your shareholder community, they might actually be interested to know that kind of thing, because they might be working for a company or an organization that could actually support their own CSA voucher program or incentive program. So knowing how to talk to the shareholders you already have, to be like, there are these other things that could actually help the organization you work for. Employers care about things like corporate social responsibility, or at least they say they do. They care about lowering the cost of healthcare if they're sponsoring their own employee health programs. So if you can find people that can get that message out there, not just to potential subscribers, but to organizations that can then fund something that makes CSA more affordable, that could be pretty valuable. Now, going with the theme of the CSA being seen as inconvenient, potentially, for those with no experience, explaining the structure of CSA, that's really, I don't know how you are normally doing this to folks who haven't done CSA before, but if you don't know what it is and you have a hard time visualizing what it is, it might be hard to commit to it. So any kind of visual media, social media, that kind of looks at, this is a typical day in the life of the CSA. This is what your pickup looks like. This is what you might be getting at this time of the year. This is what you might get at this time of the year. Visual things or tangible things, even could be, anything like that is pretty valuable. And what we've been kind of doing here, we've started this thing called a peer promotion program, where we're getting employees who are CSA involved in CSA at UK, who have experience and are very enthusiastic about it. We're getting them to go try to just do guerrilla marketing to their to the people that they work with across campus, because they're all in 12,000 employees. They're all in different kinds of departments. They have different social networks. So any kind of promotion of what CSA is, not just what it is, but how it works, how to do it, that kind of hands-on, like bringing a friend to a pickup to see what it looks like, or bringing someone to a farmer's market, things like that can create new CSA people. So Yeah. Next page, please. The health benefits really keep coming up, and I don't know how much of that is that this is this program that we've done is associated with health and wellness at UK. But one thing that UK does really well, and others have done really well, is doing complementary wellness programming to support CSA. So this is another way of kind of figuring out how to do CSA. By offering, chef demos or nutrition consultations, or learning, how to prepare the thing you're getting in your box this week. Those kind of programs are pretty valuable in terms of not only understanding CSA, but kind of, figuring out the nutritional benefits, or how to prepare foods in a way that is more nutritious and healthy, and things like that. So yeah, any way to figure out how to make complementary wellness programming work with CSA can be appealing to employers. It can be appealing to people who are looking to make a change in their diets or in their wellness lifestyle, things like that. So I think it's an important point to keep emphasizing. CSA is a commitment to healthy living, things like that. Next page, please. Final page. And this is maybe more preaching to the choir kind of marketing, but the people that are longer term shareholders, they care about things beyond the food that they're getting. They care about the social and environmental impacts of what they're doing. So, marketing, and it's not just long-term shareholders. We saw that even those folks that decided not to buy in, to buy into CSA that year, they did care about these things as well. So figuring out avenues to market the benefits of CSA to local economies, supporting the viability of local or small farms and rural landscapes. Some people might be really interested in the idea of how diversified production can protect unique varieties or preserve heritage varieties, or things that have been lost to conventional agriculture. That could be a pathway to engage different folks. And then, yeah, CSA might have some environmental benefits. So again, it depends on who you're talking to, but these are the things that came up in our study. And with the, kind of our next steps, what we're trying to work on right now is we really want to repeat this survey with people around the country, and with a focus on those who are in, food access programs that involve CSA, lower income or non-traditional shareholders, kind of really focusing in on this emerging shareholder population, different populations, to figure out how best can we get not only market CSA to those who have not yet done it, but how can we support them in the long term? How can we make the experience appropriate to like what they want out of it, in a way that keeps them coming back and can tie in with food access programs and so on. So that's where we're going with this in the future. This is really just the kind of first look at whether or not this methodology can do anything, and we think it has some promise. So if we have questions, we have time, and there are some resources there. These organizations, Farm Share Coalition and the CSA Innovation Network, which is the national organization, there's lots of different toolkits and promotional material that you can use that kind of looks at benefits of CSA for different audiences. And I'm sure they've promoted this stuff already. So I'll stop talking and listen for questions.
Yeah, Jairus, I haven't seen any questions come through the chat just yet, but want to invite everyone to drop anything in there that you want to ask Thomas and Jairus about this research. It's really interesting, and I feel like Jairus, you kind of dug in a little bit already to like how those results translate into actual marketing tools, right? Like if affordability and convenience are the biggest barriers to folks that have no CSA experience, kind of ways to break that down. I'm just curious, I guess, with that, if you have any other like insights, maybe from like the focus group that wasn't in the survey and like the hard data, was in terms of convenience, because it seems like once they join, that convenience isn't as much of a concern, right? So just getting them over the hump, I guess. Was there anything that came through, maybe the focus groups, or I don't know if there was anecdotal questions in the actual survey of like what was the perceived inconvenience? Was it like having to pick up the food? Was it having to purchase it in advance? Like, was it all the things? I'm just so curious about that one, and if like there was any like nuance to it.
Um, I don't know, Thomas, you might remember some too, but I think it was mostly the pickup, um, finding a convenient pickup location. And once you find something that works with your schedule, then it becomes a non-factor. But I could be wrong. It could be, I mean, other studies have talked about food preparation and how, some people have forgotten how to cook, so, and they had to learn all that again during COVID. But even before that, it's kind of like that can be seen as an inconvenience, not knowing what you're going to get prior to getting it, and then having to figure out if you need to go to make another grocery run or whatnot. That I think those are things we've heard in other focus groups. Just not knowing what is going to be involved on a weekly basis. And for some people, that was a benefit. Like they didn't want to choose. They did not want to choose their food. And so they're happy to have a surprise and then figure out what to do with it. So it really just depends on the person.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I feel like what we've seen a lot of farms do in the Kentucky Farm Show Coalition is just try to do a preview. So I feel like a marketing tip there is, and a lot of farms are already doing this, but just offering if you take weekly pictures of your shares, offering a kind of photo library, or even just like a written down, this is the vegetables that we grow, and this is what you can kind of expect. Because I do find that a lot of CSA members, they want to like visually see what's going to be in the box each week or get a preview, or they want to kind of just know potentially about certain crops that you're growing. So I totally understand that. Yeah, we haven't gotten any other questions through the chat. I guess maybe I had one other question that Thomas or Jairus, you guys can answer. Like, I guess if you like could kind of wave a magic wand and create a CSA that you feel like would reach the most people, um, like what aspects of, I guess it's just, to me, it's that careful balance of like not over modifying the model. But like, which kind of the CSA trends do you feel like are headed in the right direction to reach more people? And where do you feel like farmers should maybe like kind of hold their ground and kind of keep advocating, right? Because I feel like it's kind of a push-pull of tension there.
I honestly feel like the growers have more of an insight into that than I would. But I mean, if I had to say anything, I think and it's based on studies in other places. Customization is a really interesting topic. I think there can be benefits to it uh, for a lot of shareholders, but it seems kind of, at least there's a really good study by Ryan Galt at UC Davis, and he showed that the people that most complained about not having the ability to customize were the people that ended up not subscribing the next year, even in cases where they actually did have the opportunity to customize. So the people that talk the loudest about customization maybe are not, like introducing it might not necessarily get them to become long-term shareholders. But I mean, but then if you go to, thinking about consumer preferences, there's just some vegetables that some people don't like, but others do. And so having the opportunity to swap out a few things can be beneficial, I think. It can help take away some of the, depending on how you do it, I guess, whether if you have technological, infrastructure that can make it easy, figuring out ways to um, get out the word of what you're going to have in the share that week, and maybe giving them a little bit of a choice can make it more convenient in other areas so they know how to do some meal planning and things like that. But I mean, customization, it really depends on your willingness to kind of take the plunge and get the right software, figure out how to organize your labor in a way that makes it efficient. You know, you want to still be efficient in terms of packing,
Yeah.
sorting.
Yeah.
If you add so much labor time to that, it can end up being, you know, to capture a few extra shareholders, it might not be worth it. So
Exactly. You kind of have to make it work for you, and it's farm dependent. No, that makes a lot of sense. And thanks for giving it a try. And then if other farms, I'd love for you to chime in the chat. If you have other thoughts on that, I feel like that's just always a good question to think about is, you know, how can we continue to reach more people with the model, but still make it work well for farmers? And then Charlene just had a follow-up question about your data and was just wondering for the aid, did you have it for the age of non-subscribers for affordability? I guess when you were looking at the non-subscriber segment, was that broken down by age? Did you see any differences in that affordability? Like were the maybe younger non-subscribers, was that ranked higher than maybe an older non-subscriber?
Thomas, did you do that in your analysis or not? I haven't done that yet.
That's the line of questioning that is still unexplored in this data set. So if you want the raw data, let me know.
Okay.
I could try to do it here in the next 5 minutes if Thomas wants to take questions, and I could tell you.
I mean, I would love just to ask Thomas. Thomas, this was your thesis, so I feel like I definitely want to ask you at least one question, and then we can still wrap up early. We're at 7:40, so we do have time.
I am curious though now. I want to know that answer. I think
just because, like, do you feel like as you got, you know, the older non-subscribers, that would be less of a issue? And yeah, I don't know. So
Thomas,
curious,
pull up your descriptive statistics, and we can look at it, can't we? Go down the what was that slide 16, 17? I don't remember. We might have an answer there for you. It's not maybe the rank. We won't be able to tell rank, but hey, there you go. Yeah, subscribers tend to be between, I don't know. It's not that different, is it? I was going to say anecdotally, it seems like people that with kids sometimes tend to want to try it out more. But no, if we ran the model, we'd be able to tell more. Sorry, can't answer your question. It's a good question.
Yeah, no, thanks, Charlene, for asking that. And feel free to drop any other thoughts in there. Thomas, I was just going to see if there was any other kind of insights from your data, like was that you didn't get to share during the presentation, or just kind of some follow-up you'd like to do. I know Jairus kind of mentioned some projects for nationally, but if you could kind of, you know, any other insights that were surprising to you, or if you were redoing the survey, any other questions you might want to ask folks to kind of get more at the nuance.
Sure. So I think something that was really interesting to me, you know, we kept looking at different segments. We kept running more analyses on the data, and really like the whole, it was disappointing because the community aspect of CSA was always low. The farm connection always seemed low. And up until a certain point, sustainability also seemed like that was not really something that a lot of people valued. But I wanted to pull up some of these slides to kind of show kind of maybe the story of that and how some of it can get lost in the data. With sustainability, once we ran, you know, people who did subscribe and follow through with the voucher, sustainability was in their top 3. They care about you know, purchasing local food. They don't want, you know, to have their food have to travel, like Jairus said, across the country, across the world. And then some of the other things that kind of came up. I thought this chart, while a little bit maybe if you're you know, you might make you a little dizzy, but it's very helpful. I think Jairus did a great job putting this together. I just thought it was really interesting that farm connection only shows up in this table in one spot, and that's for lower income. So for people who you might not think of as your typical CSA subscribers, they value that connection to the farm more than any other group in what we surveyed. Now, like, obviously this isn't a huge data set, but it was cool to see that come up. I think one limitation of having 11 values is that some of them kind of morph into other values. So like your sustainability becomes a blanket value that captures other ideas. And so there's limitations to that. But I think overall, to see sustainability high here is really interesting, because for so many of the initial analyses that we ran, it wasn't in the top 5, and it was what's going on. So anyway,
I think your point about the farm connection and lower income is really important. They'd come across some other studies where it talked about how, if you have a lower income, this is more of a commitment. So folks that tend to be lower income and subscribe, they're taking a leap, but they can be the most dedicated of the shareholders, because maybe they are getting that connection. Maybe that connection with the farmer is, maybe they're asking more questions. Maybe they're more, something happened there that made them value that connection. So, and that's actually come up in other studies, and so thanks for pointing that out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it may be more difficult to pull folks in that have lower incomes because it is such commitment, but they can end up being the most committed.
Mm-hmm. That is interesting. And we had just a comment in the chat of like another way to think about that income affordability by age is it's possible that folks that are a little bit older that might be on fixed income might also have some affordability issues, as well as younger people, right? So maybe on either end, you could see some differences. Yeah, so it's interesting, but thank you guys so much for all the insights. It's super interesting to hear this work and kind of think about some ways that this could be kind of translated into marketing.